can start the script.
Okay, Tom Barron has a question.
Before we get started, I just want to let you know that I have to break no later than 7 o'clock because I got to go to town hall for the selectmen's meeting.
Okay, well, hopefully we'll be finished up by then, but we'll leave that up to Nate and Krista to help us along. Thank you, Tom, for that.
You're all set, Kathy.
It looks like we're all set. Thank you, Kyle. So the November 10th, 2020 workshop meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is about to convene. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kathy Williams, and I'm the Town of Yarmouth Town Planner, and will be serving as your moderator for this virtual meeting. I'll now turn it over to the Planning Board Chair.
Welcome to the November 10th, 2020 Yarmouth Planning Board meeting. My name is Joanne Crowley, and I'm Chair of the Yarmouth Planning Board. I'll begin by taking a roll call to establish quorum. Tom Barron.
Present.
Susan Britta.
Present.
Brad Goodwin.
Here.
Liz Hartsgrove.
Present.
Will Rubenstein.
Here.
Chris Vincent.
Here.
And Joanne Crowley present. With the quorum present, I will now call the meeting to order. The moderator and our host as well with Kyle Penticini, Kathy Williams, will now explain how remote participation for our proceedings this evening will go. Kathy?
Thank you. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the order. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or the live feed on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel. You may also listen to the meeting by dialing into there's no number provided on the meeting and notice. You have to log in. The meeting will also be posted on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel for future viewing. Please be patient as we work to overcome any challenges with the virtual meeting. All audience participants enter the virtual meeting muted and will be unmuted when called upon to speak by the chair or moderator. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. Do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices when speaking, and all votes, not that we plan to have many this evening, but all votes must be roll call votes. Although we don't seem to have any public here today, public comment can be taken at the discretion of the chair. Members of the public may request to speak by selecting the raise hand button or *9 on their phone and waiting for the chair to call upon them. As an alternative to making comments via the online audio or phone, you may also submit comments to the moderator during the public comment question period via the virtual meeting chat function, which I assure you is on this evening. To do this, click on the chat icon and type your message. When prompted, the moderator will read comments and questions into the record. Members of the public are asked to identify themselves by first and last name for the public record and then provide their comment. I will now hand the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Kathy. Tonight, the only item on our agenda is training for us, members of the Planning Board, who will be facilitators at the upcoming workshops. So this training session is to prepare us for our roles, which are important in the visioning workshops that begin next week. I think it's important for the public who may watch this at a later date to understand that we take this facilitation effort very seriously. Effective facilitation of these workshops is really important. The outcomes and information that we gather needs to be accurate, it needs to be inclusive, and it needs to be consistent. This session, we're going to be trained by the experts to make sure that this common template that we use to discuss the visioning statement with the town is consistent. It's a very important element of our plan. And so with that, this training session will be conducted by Leslie Witten, our consultants, with the help of Kathy, and Kyle Penticini is one of our hosts and moderators. So I'd like to begin. Kathy, I'll turn it back to you. And thank you, Nathan and Krista, for your help and for having us be the best scribes that there are. Thank you.
I think I'm going to hand it directly over to Horsley Witten, who have prepared the documents that are included in your packets this evening with regard to the facilitator training materials. Kyle has graciously volunteered or been commandeered, I'm not sure which one it is, to serve as our host for the workshop. So he'll be the one that will be putting people in to the different breakout rooms, and he will also be the one pulling us back in and letting us know that we have 5 minutes left and that sort of thing. So I'm going to hand it over. It looks like Krista's going to be starting the presentation.
Great. I want to thank you for that great introduction, Joanne. That was very thoughtful, and I do appreciate the effort that the town's putting into this. It's really appreciated. So tonight, the purpose of this training, which I think just to reiterate what you had said, is just to walk through the process of the public workshop that's going to happen and the small group activity, so you feel prepared and confident in facilitating those discussions. So we did put together some training materials that you received, and they are very prescriptive, very detail oriented, step by step, and that's really just to be helpful for those probably who haven't facilitated before, but also as a tool for you to use. So if I thought maybe we could just go a round of introductions. I know you all just introduced yourself through the roll call, but it would be appreciated maybe just, how long you've been on the board, just as something about yourself. So I guess I could start with the roll call. So let's see. So Joanne Crowley, so you're our chair.
Yes, I am. I've been on the planning board, I think 5 years now. I've lost track. Chair new this year. I live in South Yarmouth and worked in the public sector my entire life. So I'm just coming back to the part of the world that I love. So, and I'm enjoying the planning board in particular. So
that's great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Barron, Thomas Barron.
Tom is good enough.
Tom, okay, very good. Thank you.
And I came on at the same time as Joanne about 5 years ago. I volunteered at town meeting. I went up to Kathy and said, you need any help? And she says, there's a spot open. And that's how I got on.
Thank you. Brad.
Brad?
I'm trying. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Did I catch you off guard?
My computer froze and I had to run upstairs. So I'm sorry. The question
That's okay.
The question was what?
So I'm just asking to introduce yourself so I can get to know you and just, how long you've been on the board.
Since '94.
Oh, excellent.
Nathan and I worked together in 2012 when we went through the hotel overlay district #2.
Very good. So you have a lot of institutional knowledge.
No, it's all faded with memory loss, but I try.
Excellent. Susan Britta, I know.
I'm here.
Yes.
Not visually, but I'm here. I'm a brand new member. I'm a brand new member of the planning board. I had been on. I served with Tom on the zoning committee for several years, and I'm a brand new member on the zoning board. I've been in Yarmouth for almost 50 years.
Great. Excellent. Thank you. And Chris Vincent.
Hi there. Yeah, I've been on the planning board since I gotta count backwards. Well, 2007, something like that, 2008. And I'm a builder here in town. I grew up in Dennis, and that's about it.
Nice, thank you. And Liz Hardgrove, I know that you are sort of multitasking. I don't know if you can hear us.
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Liz Hartsgrove. I have been on the planning board for about a little over a year. But I've worked with, my profession is working with municipalities, and I've worked for 4 different municipalities on the Cape for almost 20 years now, in various capacities, either in regulatory capacity or in the town manager's office. And currently I work for the town of Barnstable as the Assistant Director of Planning and Development, with focus on visitor services, arts and culture, economic development, parking, planning, and transportation planning. And I'm also the planning board, the Yarmouth Planning Board's rep for CPC.
Excellent. So there's a nice mix of folks. people who have participated in a while and some new ones. That's
I
excellent.
think in Will
One more.
Bernstein
You
is,
forgot Will.
is
I'm good.
at the end of the alphabet.
Oh,
No,
my
okay.
list keeps
All right, well,
shifting.
thanks. That's good enough, Will.
That's it. I'm Will.
We're
There
good.
you
I-
go. Thank you
I'm a-
and good night. Drop the mic, right?
I will. Oh, I'm sorry. I dropped my pen.
There you go.
Will, please.
Thank you. My wife Sandy and I moved here in 2004 to take over and run Camp Wingate Kirkland, which is a overnight day camp and outdoor ed center, which started in 1957 at the site formerly known, that was the site called Camp Kirkland, which is now Flax Pond Day Camp. It was Camp Kirkland for boys. 79 White Rock Road was Camp Wingate for girls. And in 1986, they merged onto this facility because there's a bazillion gallons of fresh water underneath that Flax Pond site. Don't you know? You can look in the archives. It's true. And I've been on the planning board for 3 months. Started when Susan and I started together. And happy to be here.
Thank you so much. I apologize. My list of on the side
Please look how
was
mad I am.
shifting.
Look how mad. Please. Okay.
Excellent. So my name is Krista Moravec. I'm a planner at Horsley Witten. I've been there almost 10 years. Prior to that, I was in another firm, but I've been practicing planning for about almost 20. So, and some of you know Nate already.
Hi everybody, Nate, municipal planner with Horsley Witten. Simultaneously proud and terrified to say that I've been here 20 years.
It's a good feeling. So I appreciate you giving us your time this evening. So have any of you facilitated a small group before? So Will has.
Yes.
Okay, so most of us have. So this probably is a refresher for you. But I think it would be good to kind of do that and kind of walk through stuff. Is there anything, given that you've been through this type of exercise before, is there anything specific that you would hope to get out of this, or any specific questions that you want us to answer?
I have one. I think it's it's one overall for the, it's just an overarching question, but facilitating a Zoom meeting, I imagine, going to be very different than facilitating an in-person gathering. And that's been my experience. So that I think some of the technological challenges, I don't think that they're significant, but I do think that it just changes the environment in the way in which we're managing our jobs. That is to capture the thoughts and make sure we record them properly and get them into a place where they are understood. So, we're going to be looking at chat boxes, we're going to be listening, we're going to be writing, all at the same time.
Yep, and I totally agree. And there is also that personal exchange that you sort of get when you're with someone face to face that you're sort of losing. And we can kind of get that if we have our cameras on, but not everyone has that capability. So we try to just manage with that. And I think over these last few months, people have gotten used to the technology and its limitations. That's some of the things that people are a little more forgiving for things that will happen. But hopefully, we can walk through some of that today or this evening about, what might be the best way to get folks to talk or, have that personal connection. I will say that we are not going to encourage people not to use the chat box because, as you said, it's difficult to manage both. You guys are going to be writing on your sheets, taking notes, as well as facilitating, which in and of itself is difficult and a challenge. But so monitoring the chat is another level of it. With the exception, if folks are having challenges with their audio, we will have to make that exception. But for the most part, we're going to encourage people not to use chat. So that's one thing that we can take off the table. Great. Is there did anybody else? Yep.
Just to follow up on that, are you saying we should not, you're saying the chat should be available but discouraged, or are you saying that we should just not have it? Because I know what I'd vote for.
And that would be
No chat.
no chat. I mean, we would prefer not to have it. I mean, we can disable it. I think,
But I also understand that it may prevent access for some folks that would need it. So I guess it's more just either hiring an octopus to help us, each of us, while we're running these things, or B, I don't know.
So part of that
appealing to the good nature of our fellow human.
Right.
I
And
don't
so
know.
part of that is we're going to talk about ground rules. And that will be one of our ground rules. And so we will so that's one of our way we're going to try to enforce it. And we will talk about that. So it's an excellent concern, and hopefully we can persuade, use that as our mechanism to keep people out of the chat. And particularly like side conversations, they're already, that would be one of our ground rules if we were in person is, limit the side conversations because the conversation disrupts. But so a conversation in chat also has that same feel to it. Does anybody else have some objectives that they want us to sort of cover this afternoon? All right. Great. So I know you've seen a lot of the materials already. Just basically the run of show for next week is, so the chair will offer an introduction of the evening, introduce all of you who are participating, who will turn it over to Kathy and myself, and we'll go over, why we're here. We'll moderate most of the presentation, talking about explaining the questions that we're going to discuss that evening, kind of giving people a head start into their small groups, what questions we're asking, what we're looking for, and then explain the ground rules. And as I mentioned, so that is part of how we're going to keep order, to keep people, helping us kind of work through the process. And what I am going to do is use the chat on this one particular moment because I don't want to share my screen. I don't think it's absolutely necessary for this one for this one item. But so here are our guide. If you guys would open your chats, please. Liz, I know you can't see them, so I will read them for you. So our ground rules, and I did add one, as I mentioned, from the materials that you have. So be kind and respectful, land the plane. So it means get to the point. Let's kind of synthesize that and kind of come to a conclusion of your statement. And you can do the hand motion too, if you'd like, land the plane. So a way to kind of get people to kind of get to what their point is. Third, be patient with technology. Again, recognizing that only ourselves to be patient with it, but if folks are having problems losing their connection, they're going to be rejoining us. So just kind of be patient with that. Be open to new ideas. This is a visioning process. So we want to be open on that regard. And then finally, no side conversations in chat. And so I will ask you, which I'm also going to ask you to ask your group, is do you agree with all of these ground rules? And if not, what would you remove or what would you change? Should we add anything?
Okay.
Mr. Barron? Yep, Tom?
Okay.
You're okay?
Yeah.
Anybody else have any revisions or changes?
Krista, could I ask just a question?
Yes,
This is
please.
Susan. This is Susan. When you talk about landing the plane, how do we, I guess, diplomatically tell someone they have, or do we say you've got 5 minutes or 4 minutes or 6 minutes? How do we get people to diplomatically land the plane without cutting them off?
No, that's a great question. And I think if you get folks to agree to these ground rules, say, okay, we all agree these are good ground rules. And then I say, do you allow me to be the enforcer of these ground rules? And everyone says yes. So now
Okay.
people have given me the right to politely say, so why don't you give me the headline of what you're saying? We put in a couple of tips in the material. How would you synthesize that state? How would you shorten that for me?
Okay.
And then the other the other way to do that is folks are going to have worksheets. We're going to encourage them to use their worksheets. You know, you have that worksheet. You can provide me as much detail as you want on that worksheet. But for this discussion today, just so we can make sure that everyone has a chance to give their idea, you know, let's try to be short and sweet about it. But then recognize that you can give us as much information as you want on that worksheet, or we can follow up later. But I think as long as we get buy-in in the beginning that you are the enforcer of those rules, we have limited time, people know what the worksheets are used for, I think we can work through the process.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. And, you know, we can talk about, you know, if there's some, we're going to go through a little bit of that too, is, you know, how do we cut people off? So in a kind way to be respectful for them as well. Because if we want to be respected, we also have to respect others. But also, you know, what if, you know, no one's saying anything? You know, I've gone through in those situations as well. How do we pull ideas out of people? Great. So let's, you know, we're good on the ground rules. Let's just, I'm going to move on a little bit just to kind of talk about your role as a facilitator. Again, you're to guide the discussion, make sure everybody has a chance to express their ideas. We're also there to kind of look for common themes and ideas and encourage a conversation. So more than just having everybody read their item off their list, how can we engage others in that? You know, part of that is, you know, who else has this idea on their list? And kind of trying to encourage a conversation between people who have similar ideas or folks want to add to that. And then the other role is to accurately record what people are saying. And again, and we can talk about note taking. Because we have no note takers, we have to do it ourselves. And because folks can't see what you're writing, it'll be important to kind of repeat back what people have said. So the process might take a little bit more time than it normally would in a Zoom platform, but I think it will work, and we'll walk through each one of those steps. So that's your general role for the evening. Any questions about that before we get into the details? Great. So I think we're going to sort of stay grouped together, and then at the end of our meeting, at our end of our discussion, we'll sort of play around with being in groups and what that looks like and kind of the controls that we have. So in the guide, we have put out some time-frames for each question. So this will help us stay on track. What I'm going to work with Kyle to set up some, I guess, reminders. So we're going to go through each of the three questions in the small groups with no coming back out to the main group. So you're going to be in that one group session for about 80 minutes. And what we'll do is, so we've got 15 minutes for the first question, 20 minutes for the second, and then about 30 for the last. And we'll send a note out, you know, if you haven't moved on to question 2, you should probably move on, you know, find a way to wrap up that conversation and move on to the next question. Recognizing that you might, some questions might go faster than others depending on the group. Yes. Well,
and Krista, what's really helpful is, and I think this ties into what Susan was asking, is that when you're in a breakout room, you will have a countdown clock, right? In your actual breakout room going down, as opposed to what I see on my screen now, which is counting up.
so I don't have a counter.
Oh, really? Because something to consider then in the settings as you look ahead is that when I've been in the breakout rooms, it is super helpful because there's really nothing to disagree about. It's like, this is the time we have.
You know, some of your tools. So that's
what I meant as a tip for just how to manage.
I love it. I love it. One of the other things that I also do is I mark the times in my sheet. You know, question 1, I should be done at this time, and I keep an eye on the clock. That's why, you know, for materials, we have a cell phone or a clock. You know, you have your monitor. It's kind of nice. It's right there if you can see it. So I generally will write the time I expect to be finished with that question and to be sure that I'm moving on if I haven't. And then I think, we can, like I said, if, Kyle can send a note and said, if you haven't moved on, it's a good time to move on. So I think that's helpful too, but I like your idea. I will look for that feature. That's a new one for me. So that's great. Yep. And then we will go through each question, but the last question, you'll get an earlier reminder from when we're going to go back out to the main group to talk about reporting out. But we'll touch on that piece later, but you'll also get a reminder for that as well when we're going to go back out to the main group. So we will be keeping track of time to help you to make sure that you're moving on. And Nate and I will also be, and I think Kathy too, if you'd like, you ask Kyle to kind of move us through the rooms and just check in. And if you feel that, maybe you want some help, you can always tag, when we're in the breakout rooms, you can send messages to the host. You can send Kyle a message and send Krista or Nate or Kathy or something. And we're happy to come and kind of help if that's needed.
On that, Krista, this is an example of the kind of question I'm going to ask. How would I send you a message right now?
So
help me send you. I see the chat box. I don't mean to divert from the training, but when you say
no, this is why we're doing this. Absolutely. Yeah. So there is on the bottom.
Yep.
Even if chat is not open, I believe. Oh, no, it's not. Okay, so we'll open chat. And then on the bottom, it says a little 2 and a colon, and it says everyone.
Well, if I open up chat.
What I can do is.
No.
Don't know if I can share my screen with that feature. So do you have a list? You see the chat on the side of your pane.
I do, yes.
And then you see the I wrote
down
in
the bottom.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Yep, that's totally fine. So if you click everyone, you'll see my name in there.
Okay, great.
And you select it.
I'm gonna say hello.
Get me out of here.
And so how do I send it?
Hit enter.
Okay, I'm serious.
And I just received it.
Okay, so it's hit enter.
And I just.
I'm the only one who doesn't. Am I the only one who doesn't get?
No, this is why we wanted to go through this today. I mean, part of it, I think, we'll get some tips on facilitating, but I think also is to kind of work through this platform as well.
And those messages go to whatever that list is of people, mostly to you and Kathy and or Kyle.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, you can choose who you want to send them to.
They're one-on-one, Joanne. That's why I just sent you one. And if you notice, they put little red, there's a little red in parentheses that says privately.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
That means it's one-on-one.
Yep.
If you send it to everyone, then you get everyone.
Got it. So I sent that list of ground rules to everyone.
Okay.
So everyone saw those. You're welcome.
That will be good to practice when we're in the breakout rooms too, to make sure, because the only way of getting out of the breakout room and talking to the outside world is through Kyle and saying, "Get us out of here, we're done," or And
you could do that as well. You could wait. That's an option if you wanted to go back into the main room to end your session, or you could wait until Kyle moves everyone back during the time.
Or we need help.
We need help.
Oh, there's no budget for each one of the facilitators having a flare gun.
I won't see it.
I tried, Will. I tried.
All right. Sorry. I guess that's next town meeting. Next town meeting. Okay.
But on that subject, that is the way in which we would communicate back to the team that we've finished.
Right. And we can designate someone that you're done.
Okay.
So if and we'll send that out. That's a good point.
Can we just add that in as part of this document somewhere in bold letters? The messaging piece of it.
Absolutely.
Now, the participants will not have access to the messaging.
I think they will. they will. That's why we're going to encourage them we're going to tell them not to use it.
Okay.
That's one of our ground rules. But if there is someone who does have trouble with their audio for whatever reason, and I have done some facilitation sessions, not on this platform, but a different one, and they did not have audio. Some older laptops don't have a microphone, or, there are different reasons. So it has happened. Yes, sir.
Krista, you said if they have to use the chat, the chat is not recorded anywhere, is it?
That is the other, yes, that is the other option, the other negative.
In other words, we have to write down the message that they are communicating.
There is a way to save the chat. However, that's a little more, you would have to personally do it before you left the room. And that's just another step that I think just complicates it a little bit more.
Just wanted to be sure.
Yep. So you can save the chat, but
you can't record the breakout.
It will not be right.
So, you need to be the recorder of that.
Right.
The only thing that will go out when everyone's in their breakout room is just Kyle's little message that says the planning board's in their workshop breakout rooms. We'll be back in a moment, kind of thing.
Right. And I don't think anybody outside of your breakout group will see the chat. It's only in that breakout group. And once we leave, it's gone. So we will add that piece about messaging. All right. All right, so materials. So you have your worksheets that you'll be writing on, either typing or writing, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And I'm just thinking about how, and then you send those to Kathy, and whether you retype them for her or however you have agreed to send them back. And
being a clerk at the church, I think it's physically impossible to type on your computer while you also try and negotiate a Zoom meeting and watch what people are doing on the screen. Because I know when I'm typing for the church as a clerk at St. Mary's of Barnstable, I basically go dark on my screen and I just keep typing. And I don't know, for all I know, everybody else in the rest of the room could be having grapes and a glass of wine. Yeah, I can't see myself darkening my screen so I can go and type all the comments, because that'd be the best way to keep an accurate count of what's going on in the meeting. But I would lose total control of the meeting.
Understood.
So it's going to have to be chicken scratch on a piece of paper and hope that I can recall it and then regurgitate it back onto a typed form and send it to Kathy Williams, along with my bill for my time and my effort. So, got it.
Yes, sir.
I have one question. On the line, it says facilitator summary sheets, one for each question. I assume the question you're referring to is the main question at the head of the sheet. In other words, there may be more than one item that you're going to list on each sheet. Am I correct?
Right. You're going to write. Yeah. So we're going to go through that. Absolutely. I'm very methodical, so I'm just going through the run of show. So after we get into our breakout groups, we're going to just, we've finished our presentation. I've reviewed all the questions the 3 questions. We've reviewed the ground rules, and we've let everybody go. And imagine you are in your breakout room now. I think what's important is to just reiterate some of those particular aspects of Zoom to make sure that everyone is familiar. Everyone can mute and unmute themselves. We're going to ask people if there's, I may have to ask you to mute you. There's some background noise. So just people will know that you're going to do that. If people can put on their video, I think that's better. I know it's hard sometimes, obviously here with streaming, but it adds that extra element of connection when you see people's faces. And again, if someone has audio trouble, you can revisit the chat. But then I would go through and have everyone introduce themselves. So you can do the round robin, like I attempted. But, you know, have your participant list open. Do folks know how to open that participant list as well? It's on the bottom, the same toolbar at the bottom of your screen. It says there should be a participants with an 11. And if you
Yep.
select that, a list of us comes up at the side. And so you can just use that as a roll call, which is probably how your chair kind of makes sure that everyone's.
But Krista,
aligned.
it just, while you're mentioning the participants list, I believe if you're a host in a breakout room, this is also your little command center if you're trying to mute somebody.
So yeah, I think.
Sorry, and we can go back to your methodical process, but I just wanted to mention
no,
it.
it's okay.
Because like we're literally, and you guys all make fun of me, but this is why I wear my air traffic controller headset to every meeting, because that's literally what we're going to be doing when we run these things. And that's why it's kind of helpful to have a command center view, and that could be helpful. Thank you.
So, and I will make a note about opening for you as a facilitator, making sure your chat's open just so you can message if you need to, and then have your participant list open so you can see all who's in your group.
Do we need to make all the facilitators co-hosts? Because there can only be one host, and that's got to be Kyle.
And so I can, but as a co-host, I do not, Kathy, are you a co-host?
I'm a co-host.
Can you mute me? And, yep.
So that was something that Kyle and I had been talking about
Yep.
as making all of the planning board members co-hosts. So when you come into the meeting and when we are giving our little presentation, Kyle's going to be doing some stuff in the background. He'll be making everybody who needs to be a co-host, and he'll also be assigning people kind of randomly to the different breakout rooms as they come in. So by the time we're done with the presentation and ready to go to the breakout rooms, you know, everyone's been put someplace and then we can go.
And that's a great, and so to your point, Will, so that's, if there is someone who is having, you know, trouble sort of ending their stream of thought, or if there's background noise, you know.
Or starting their stream of thought. If I have to ask somebody to unmute themselves one more time, sorry. But
no, I think
it goes both ways.
Yeah. And I think definitely if there's background noise, people might not hear it. So it's good to offer that. And then you could just let them know, look, I had to mute you. I think the sound is coming from your, you know, you've been highlighted in the box. That sound is coming from you. Just know that. So when you speak again, so that's that's great to have. So I've just made a list about opening the participant list for you to make sure that's one of your checks that you do. Set up your command center. I like that. Let's see. And, you know, and so then review the ground rules again, make sure that everyone is on board with those. And if they wanted to add any, I mean, I think it's okay if someone wants to add a ground rule and people agree to it. I think that's how you get that camaraderie in the group, and that builds that respect, and people sort of say, yep, I agree to that. You're in charge. So that's sort of that opening piece of it. That's your housekeeping. I would also remind them about their worksheets. Again, we have limited time, so we're only going to ask for one of your answers that you write, but make sure that, you know, any other detail that goes on your list, on your worksheets, as much as you want, you can write on it after the session. So, you know, encouraging them to put as much detail or ideas that they have on there. So I thought, you know, the next thing I wanted to go through is sort of the process of the question. Did anybody have any other questions about sort of our setup when we're either our command center or any other features of Zoom that perhaps you had questions about that we could troubleshoot right now? Oh, great. And if they come up, we can, I mean, I'm sure they'll, as we start to go through this, it might become a little more apparent. So, I mean, I think some of the things we want to think about that I tried to set up in our guide is, you know, if someone is speaking too fast or speaking too long, how do you keep someone from interjecting in a negative way. And also thinking if someone joins late, how do you get them up to speed? So some of the things that we want to think about as we sort of walk through this exercise. So our first question is strengths and assets. And this question we're only giving this 15 minutes. So with that, does anybody have any sort of concerns about this question? So it is, what are Yarmouth's strengths and assets? What about Yarmouth do you value the most and want to preserve for future generations, and why? So is there anything, I mean, it's sort of it's the positive question, you know, we start off on a positive note. You know, there might not be any sort of controversial answers that might come out of that. But I mean, so I want us to think about that too while we're here.
Are you asking us for
I'm
answers
asking
now?
you.
Okay. Well, seeing as how I opened my big mouth, it's a comfortable town. It's an easy town to live in. It has its good points and it's some bad, but it's worth living here.
That's great.
Let someone else add.
So I would write that down. And then I would say, well, who else has that answer? You know, who else agrees with that? Who else had that on their list? And, you know, and you can ask folks, they can physically raise their hand. They can use the raise their hand feature. And I think the idea is to kind of make a mark of how many people said that in your group. And then, okay, so why, let's have a conversation about why we put that on our list, you know, and then knowing who said yes, you can say, okay, well, why did you put that on your list? Is it something different from what Tom said? And so you can sort of try to, once you know who also had that on the list, you can sort of try to start a conversation among them. It's one way to sort of get the group together.
Will, you're one of our newer townspeople. How about you? How about your comments?
Hello. Well, I'm still stuck in process land over here, but because I keep hearing about this list, but I'm not sure. We're
asking people to write their answers on their list.
No, I get that. But what I'm saying is, isn't one of the first things we're going to do to ask them to take a minute and make a list? Okay, because I didn't see, maybe I missed where that was.
So our first is, so we'll ask the participants.
And Tom, I really like living here because there's lots of geographic diversity. Sorry. So
on our list, so everyone is going to get our own worksheet. Right. And so our first, so after we ask our question, so if they don't have a worksheet, they can just write on a top of a piece of paper their strengths and assets, and then just give them a few minutes to write down their answers. You know, if they attended the informational meeting, they might already have prepared for it. So that would be kind of nice. And, you know, I think we identified 5 minutes. That seems like a long time, but, you know, I would give folks some time. You know, you can kind of see when people are sort of wrapping up or, you know, but, you know, 5 minutes is the marker. If the people are going over, you can say, okay, we're going to get started. And you can continue to write as we talk. But I think people will be pretty quick in writing down their answers. And you can just do the round robin. And as folks give their answer, you can, you know, who else has that answer? And then sort of ask the group, well, why, why would you put that on the list?
Can I ask a clarifying question? This is Liz.
Yes, Liz.
Kathy, we're having this pre-registered, correct? And there's a limited occupancy, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so do we get emails that we can are we going to email them the sheets that then they can think about these things in advance, or do we want them to think on the fly? What is the objective here?
I think the objective is for people to know the questions ahead of time, because I know that when I was filling it out, you know, I thought of things later. The one thing that works well with the workshop format is that this isn't your only time to get the information out. You could continue writing for the next day or whatever, and then submit that to the town. So there may be the conversations in the workshops that people have, but they also have the opportunity to continue working on it. But the idea is to send the worksheets to the people who have signed up ahead of time.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much for that.
So
The townspeople will scan these back to you, Kathy?
They can, what we find is most people like to just drop stuff in the Dropbox. They love to come to town hall.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm shocked. They love to come to town hall. So, they can put it in the Dropbox. They can mail it if they want, or if they have the capability and it's easier for them, they can scan it and send to the visioning@yarmouth.ma.us.
Kathy, could I ask a question?
Sure.
Will these worksheets be available on the website just in case someone does not participate in the workshop but does want to send some ideas forward? Will they be available on the website?
That's a great idea, Susan. We can certainly get those on the website. That's a good idea.
And I think
When I was going through the material, on page 4, the second item, it says ask the participants to write on the topic on a piece of paper, etc. And my concern is that it gets to the right place when they do, and I'm suggesting that they address it to Town of Yarmouth Visioning Workshop and give a date and their name, certainly.
Yeah. Yep.
That way it has a train of custody, if you will.
Yep, and we will be sure that that is on the end of the presentation for the evening. So after we come back out to the main group, we'll have the address and an email, depending on how folks would like to submit it. So we can do that.
For those who want to submit, they receive it via email because they're registrants. So will the 3 questions be an attachment to the email once they've registered? They come to us, they register. We get back to them to say you are confirmed for this date, and here are the questions we're going to be discussing?
The way it comes back now is that you're registered for the event, and it gives information and thanks them. I don't think you can add an actual attachment to that automatic email. So we're going to be sending it out individually to people once we get some registration information. I can double check with Kyle, and maybe Will's familiar with this, but I don't think you can add an attachment to that email.
But you can do what Susan suggested, is you can just make a little URL
link
in the visioning section of the website, and it automatically, when you click on it, you'll download these one PDF with the 3 pages.
That's a good point.
That's one way to do it.
And will it be a fillable document?
Joanne, that's advanced. That's advanced stuff.
Well, you can send a Word document.
It really depends on your computer. Yeah.
I'm just asking.
Turned it into
no. I was.
PDF.
It didn't come across as.
I'm actually
as funny
asking Krista, if I may. Will, I'm just asking Krista and Kathy. Can it be a fillable document or no? It's going to be handwritten?
I think you can turn it into a fillable PDF if people want to write it.
I mean, you can change it to a Google Doc or something if someone wanted to do that, if they know how to do that or something.
I think you can make it a fillable PDF if that's the way we want to go.
If we can, I think that would be an option that would be useful for some people.
Mm-hmm.
You can also use a Word document. I don't know if that's some, PDFs are a little more trustworthy in the cybersecurity world, but I think a Word document is another option.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of the person is there. They want to just send it back. They're not going to stop it in town hall. They're not going to put it in an envelope with a stamp. They just want to email it back to Kathy Williams.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have the email address up too if they prefer to do that. We'll try to have as multiple ways that people can do it as possible to get it back.
Yeah.
So writing it themselves, typing it themselves, they can email it, they can drop it off. And if people have other, they can always email with a question if they have a concern.
Mm-hmm.
No, those are great ideas.
All right, so We have folks that are writing their lists. We're waiting for them to think of their ideas for this question. I think it's okay if folks don't feel, if someone doesn't feel comfortable sort of speaking in front of the group, there might be one, they can still listen and participate that way. They can just continue to write and send their ideas. Just remember that you don't need to call on that person. So if they choose they don't want to read their list, there could be someone who doesn't want to read their list. Or if they're with someone, recognize different situations, how people want to report their answer to the group. So just double checking my.
Krista, could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
If I was running a meeting in the hearing room, if we had a number of people say over and over again, I like strawberries. After a while, I'd say, we've heard that point. Do you have anything else to say? Or do you want to have the weight of 19 people have said they like strawberries?
I do want to have that weight, but get it in a different way. So if my answer is strawberries, or if Nate's answer is strawberries, and I say, okay, who else has strawberries as their answer? And everybody raises, when that answer is given, have everyone acknowledge that is on my list too. And just make a note of that. And then say, okay, folks, so when I get to you, you can offer something else.
All right, so if we get 2 or 3 strawberries, all of a sudden I would probably stop the meeting for a second, say, anybody else have strawberries, and then move on from there?
Yeah, and then why did you pick strawberries? And then anyone who said I had strawberries can answer why they picked strawberries.
Okay.
So we're more than just making a list of all the assets and strengths. We want people to explain and have a conversation about why they picked that. So we can, more ideas could be generated from a conversation as opposed to just reading off a list. We start off with a list because it just helps us generate some ideas, but hopefully more than one person has that on their list, and those 2 or 3 people can sort of have a conversation and let us know why they have that on their list. Definitely.
Krista, just a clarification on process here. As I read your instructions, we'll have 8 people in the room, and we ask for 1 volunteer to person number 1. Tell me one of your topics, one of your answers, just one. And they talk about it. And then there is the inquiry of the other 7. Who else has that on their list? And we take account. So we know that 7 of 8 people had wastewater treatment on their list. And then we then asked the balance of the people the why question. So we get the what, and then you go, so we've got one topic with however many people picked it. Then we go to person number 2 and ask them for if they have something different than what person number 1. Am I understanding this?
Yep.
And then round robin, how many of you had this on your list? And we take account of that. Am I?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I think that partly answers Brad's question. There is some order to, as I'm reading it, it's kind of a strict person number 1, everybody gets it, then person number 2, and then we go through the whole group.
Right. You're trying to give everyone an opportunity to provide a unique answer.
Yeah.
If they don't want to provide another one, like say they're fourth to be called and all of their answers have already been generated, it's okay to pass. Or, and they can participate in the conversation earlier too, well, why did you pick that? Was your reasoning a little different from Tom's, or, what have you? So, and that's okay. And sometimes that's why questions go by faster, is because a lot of people have a similar perspective. But we're hoping to find some new ideas too. And if you do have time, so some of the, so if you kind of go through the list really quickly, so we're on assets and we still have, 5 minutes left, from your little time keep. You could go around again. If, does anybody have something that wasn't called already? We still have a little time left on this. So sort of, I think you can go around again if you still have some time. I think you need to give yourself a little flexibility in the discussion. I think that's okay. As long as people feel they're able to offer their ideas and they feel they're being heard, I think that's important. One of the things I just wanted to touch on is with your note taking. It's okay to ask people to slow down. You are facilitating and you're note taking, so you need to make sure you get it right. You can ask people to repeat themselves. You can, if there is this long sort of explanation, one of the things that we have in here, okay, so how do you sum that up for me? What's the headline version of that? So when you take your notes, you're able to kind of get a clearer indication of people's ideas and to read it back. I think it's important to read it back. Normally we would have a flip chart and people could see it. Since we don't have that, it's important to read it back to people to make sure. We really want to be careful not to rephrase things that people say. People want to, how they say it, that's how they want it to be documented. So we want to make sure that we do that. So reading it back is important. Does that make sense? All right. So you can ask people if people want to use their raise the hand feature. I think, this is fine too. It's a small enough group that you can keep track of folks. Just be sure if someone isn't using their video that you're also, and that feature will show up. So if I raise my hand, you can see me, here I am.
Well, you're just giving us the thumbs up.
Thumbs
That's
up.
different than raising your hand.
You can't find raise your hand.
It's in your command center, Krista.
It's not in my command.
It's at the bottom of participants, no?
Oh.
I don't know why they put it there.
It's been so long since I've done it. So you have to look in participant. Oh, thank gosh you're here, Will. I don't know what you're really helping me. So if everyone wants to go look in their participant list,
and then you can lower
invite,
your hand.
Mute me, and raise your hand. Awesome. And I guess, if I agree with your statement, I might do that.
The tricky part is I think the thumbs up is only like for Mississippi and then it's gone.
That's okay.
Well, I mean,
yeah,
it's not easy to catch that, but it's better than not having it, I guess.
Right. So we won't, you might see that pop up, but it's not something that you have to ask people to use. Some more savvy folks. So there you go. I was looking for it at the bottom of the page, so I can raise and lower my hand. Thank you. Let's see. I just want to make sure that we're still hitting all the points. So that's sort of the process. So we do the round robin, make sure everyone has a chance to speak, try to understand who has the same ideas, why they have those, why they gave those answers, and sort of making sure we're documenting what folks say as they say it and reading it back to them to make sure we've captured that. Are there any sort of scenarios that you might be concerned about in that discussion?
You guys hear me?
Oh, a little bit, Nate. You're a bit soft.
How's that? Is that better?
A little bit. Yep.
So just the scenario I want to talk about, which is very common, is you will ask a question and you'll say to the group, you'll ask them about what you think an asset or a strength is for their community. And you'll come to Krista and she'll say, I heard that they're going to put a fleet of jet skis on the Bass River. Like, doesn't answer the question, doesn't, just, they came here tonight because they heard something and they're scared of it and they want answers. So like this is a common moment in facilitation. So there's a few different things. Like if it is a question of fact, one of the things that you can do is like maybe shoot up your flare to Kyle and have Kathy come in and answer the question. right? That's one way to handle it. It was sort of a reasonable question of fact. Is this happening? I heard this is happening. Is this happening? But what about that? And then you can get it answered and move on. If it's another thing that could happen is they might be offering information that's better for another question. You say, what is a strength? You say, I can't stand the traffic on Route 28. Okay, well, we'll have an opportunity to get to that because we're going to talk about challenges. And so, but let's park that. And why don't you so sort of redirect the question. Or if the other item, another way to deal with this is somebody may, bring up a very, very specific issue. I have concerns about affordable housing. And, so that you want to sort of remind everybody to step back and go back to the opening presentation and talk about where we are in the process. We're at the visioning stage of this process. Something like affordable housing or public transportation or conservation of open space, all of these things are going to be discussed as we develop the local comprehensive plan. Right now, we're setting a very broad vision, so we're not there yet. And we're going to, so that's something that you're going to have an opportunity to discuss in more detail. But tonight, we want to think very visionary, very high altitude about what we're doing. So that's just like a lot of times people just come in and throw a curveball. They came to a meeting and they've got something to say, and it doesn't matter what you ask them, they're going to ask it. So there's just a few different sort of deflection techniques that I want you to be aware of.
So Will has raised his hand.
Thank you. I wanted to add one, which I found really helpful, Nate, which is what I call the parking lot, because a lot of people want to be heard. That is the most important thing to them, right? No matter what the content is, they just want to be heard, and that is totally reasonable. And so you can, and I have done, we don't have like a flip chart, but you can certainly say to them, I have a little parking lot of stuff and it sounds like it's important to you. And unfortunately, I can't do much about it in this particular setting, but it just gives a way to capture information so that people are heard, but also not get the train totally off the tracks. I mangled a little bit of that, but I think you get the idea.
That's absolutely right.
I think that's great. We've used the parking lot a lot, or the bike rack.
Like if you're standing up at a front in a big room, you'd literally put a flip chart and you write parking lot on it and you just stick stuff on it so that people can see it. It's been captured, but it doesn't direct from the main.
Right. Yep. Kathy.
Course.
Should we ask them to rephrase it? Because if you're looking for something that's an asset, perhaps the asset that person thinks about affordable housing is they're really happy that we have it. And maybe the weakness they might feel is that we don't have enough of it. So I think we need to be careful, of trying to get it to answer the question, because you might find that somewhere in there is the nugget that is answering the question or providing some information, and we don't want to lose that or discourage people from participating by saying, oh, well, that's something that goes over here. We don't want to lose it, but is it something that can be, like if someone's talking about traffic, I consider that to be a huge challenge for the Cape in general. So I think that when people start talking about traffic and saying Route 28, I think the traffic on Route 28 is untenable. I think that that's a reasonable weakness to identify. Because then when you get into the vision, I think, might find that people might say, my vision for Yarmouth is a lot of different housing opportunities for people so everyone can live here affordably. Maybe that's someone's vision. Or having reasonable residential density and population so that our existing transportation networks can be maintained without having 4-lane highways everywhere, which I think would impact people's historic context and enjoyment of Cape Cod. So I think there's ways of maybe getting out what they're trying to say and putting it into one of the categories that we're talking about.
Kathy, this is Liz. I think that's a great reminder to us. I think one technique is to remember to ask, well, why do you think that? Or why is that important to you? And just continue to ask why, and they'll dive down and dissect it a little bit more, so then we can find out really more specifics rather than generics. I don't necessarily like 100% the parking lot, because once you open that up saying you've got a parking lot, people are going to want to park cars in there. And that's all it's going to turn into is a complaint session rather than really keeping focused on the real core reason why we're there. So yes, I just hesitate in making sure that that's an advertisement.
I charge $50 a spot, but I get what you're saying, Liz.
Hey,
Now,
I work in Hyannis. I know the parking right.
I know. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear.
Look what happened to the drive-in site, parking lot.
So Liz, I like that, you ask a follow-up question. So why would you do that? It's sort of also, who is involved? How would this happen? Where would this happen? He's trying to kind of get more information out of a particular, if it's just a single statement, the reporters, who, what, when, where, why, kind of think in that mode. So how do you pull some of that information out? And I would also, and I also think people talk about different ideas differently than we do as planners. So I think it's really important to sort of understand how they phrase things and their perceptions. So that I think note-taking in that regard too is kind of important. You might catch some interesting phrases and topic points or themes as how people talk about different issues. And that sort of can resonate as you start to write your vision statement, picking up on those terms. So another reason why note-taking is kind of important. You can kind of, those little aha moments like, oh yes, that's how we talk about that. Yes, sir, yes.
What Nate was saying earlier, the type of question that you gave an example of, Nate, is typical of what would be called the local gossip. And gossip can take a lot of different forms and go in 10 different directions. It's a matter, I would think of trying to keep a lid on just how far afield some of that conversation goes. Would I be correct?
Yes.
I said, you're on mute, but so am I. He's nodding his head, yes. And I think maybe if there starts to be a disagreement among folks in your group, about the facts or the rumor, I think that's another opportunity to maybe get Kathy to come in and sort of, settle it or kind of give us what's the current status. It might be a project that's happening. I like that idea. I don't know if Kathy, if you're up for that.
I don't want to get sidetracked on spending 5 minutes talking about
Or
a gossip question, or simply trying to redirect people back to, well, that's something that we can look into, but right now we're trying to find out what you view as strengths or weaknesses or visions for you.
That is another way to go about it. Thank you,
and Kathy. They can certainly email me if they have questions about it, and I'd be happy to let them know what I know.
Yep, and I think that's enough. So we can say, okay, we'll follow up on that question, sort of like the parking lot, but it's, we'll follow up later. I think that's a good point for that. Thanks. And, and if someone just doesn't give up, there might be that person who just doesn't give up. And what we can do is we can, maybe there's a separate breakout room for, if it's an opportunity, that person just needs to get it off their chest. They just need to talk about this issue is really important. And maybe there is an opportunity for them to go with someone and they can take notes. We've sort of done that in a live session where, one of our facilitators, we have an extra facilitator on staff. They can sit with that person and just listen to them and take notes and kind of go through the process with them. If there's someone like that, we can maybe set up a situation where they can talk with someone offline during the session in another breakout room.
I wouldn't want to lose their input on the rest of the questions. So I really kind of would probably direct them more to getting in touch with me afterwards. And I'd be certainly happy to speak with them.
And that would be our priority to do that for sure. But if there's someone who just, like I said, they can't let it go. I mean, we could probably do that. And I think that would probably work. But I have had an incident or two where they're not gonna let it go.
This is Yarmouth. We're not going to have any of that.
They're all great. So kind of getting folks to be succinct, dodging, kind of moderating difficult situations. Is there any other scenarios that folks might think they might encounter that they're just maybe some tips? All right.
Krista, I know that sometimes in here you indicated that if there's some time left, you can refer to the tickler questions in the original script. It seems like you've gone through the script. Did you want to add the tickler questions there so everyone has it in one spot?
We could add them back. I like those questions. I thought they were really helpful. We tried to make them a little more succinct for the survey and kind of work through that, but we can add them back. I think that I like them. They're good. If you have some dead silence and you really just want to give some folks some other food for thought, we can pull those back in.
It's just good to have it in one document because you refer to this other script.
I know, I
sounds like
apologize for that.
This would, in a sense, be the new script. And I really like the way Joanne said, what is your comment? How many of you had that comment? And why did you have that comment? So that's the 3 mantras you need to keep going and just going around to the different people and getting new stuff.
Yep. So were there any, I just wanted to focus on, so the first 2 questions are I think are straightforward, assets and strengths, weaknesses and challenges. I just, if you're okay with those 2 questions, I just wanted to focus on the last question, which talks about our future. And so in that one, we ask, and it's structured a little differently because the follow-up questions in our script are really questions that we want folks to answer. So what is your future vision of Yarmouth? What are your hopes for future generations? And when people are going to be writing their ideas, and the things that we want them to answer when they give us their vision are, what are the opportunities that exist to reach that vision? So does that, what's happening in town already that can sort of support that vision and bring it forward? What are the barriers that need to be overcome? Does your vision build on the strengths and assets that we've already talked about? And how do they do that? And will your vision help us meet the challenges that we talked about and how? So sort of trying to link kind of this big picture idea of what they see in town, but how, and to our previous discussion. So sort of creating this bigger picture of something that, and then ultimately what we would report out to the group. But so there's a little more complexity in this last question when we ask people. So it might take a little more time to go through everyone as well. So did anybody have any sort of thoughts or concerns or questions about that one and how that would run?
I have one. I answered the question, just pulling some standard responses, I guess. And it seemed to me that the vision would be many topics. And maybe I've just seen too many vision statements. And it's not just one thing. It could be protect our waterways. I want the town to be safe and clean. I want it to be inclusive. I want it to be affordable. And I want it to have sound financial footing.
Yeah. And I think the idea,
The idea, I guess, is that each of those become a topic, because the answer to those questions, based on the vision, consider what are the opportunities that exist for a safe and clean town of Yarmouth. So each one of those topics, I think, has to be discussed separately, or no?
I think that, people can sort of talk about which one they want to talk about more. I mean, I think you can write them all down, but, if people have a more passionate stance on one of those particular statements that they made, particularly in how they asked that question, because I think the idea is to recognize we have a big vision, but there's gonna take some time to reach it. And how do we reach it? So that's sort of the thought behind asking those other questions. So if it's a clean and safe environment, well, what are our challenges right now? Why don't we have a clean and safe environment, or do we? And how do we keep it? And things like that.
But as a facilitator, if I were the respondent who gave those 5 things, I would then turn to the participant and say, what's the most, what would I ask them to prioritize? What's the most important one to you and why?
Sure. Yeah. And I think,
and then do a round robin and see if anyone else thinks that that's an important element of our vision for us to be safe and clean.
Yeah.
I don't know why I put those 2 together. I don't know.
Fine. That's okay. We were talking about strawberries before. It's fine.
It's because I haven't cleaned my house in a while.
I think that's,
anyway,
I think, yeah.
So,
and
you know what I mean? Is because that round robin model that you use to the other questions may in fact be useful as a model for this question, because I think it is topic centered.
And we sort of offer some of that, and if people want to respond to it, I think at this point, we're hoping, the round robin is to keep people from talking over each other. You don't always have to use it. If people seem to get a rhythm and working in these sort of virtual modes, I think that's, you don't need to use the roll call vote, but just to make sure that you get everyone to offer an answer. But in this sort of question, it might not, people might have an offer, a conversation that they want to start based on that idea that someone just said, and they might not be next in line. But that's what we want to encourage. We want to encourage a dialogue, because ultimately we want to get the group to sort of agree on, this is our shared ideas. These are our shared themes that we want to bring out and talk about and report out to the bigger group of what we talked about. So if someone has a list of 5 things, I like the idea of asking them, well, which one is the most important to you? I like that. I think that's a good approach. Yeah, I think, like I said, these are very prescriptive and very methodical. And if you get a rapport with your group, that's better, and you're probably going to have a more easier conversation among the group. As long as everyone gets a chance to share their ideas, I think that's important. Do people feel comfortable with that?
I think Joanne had some great ideas.
Yep.
Talking about future ideas or trying to implement ideas is really a head bending type of exercise, and not everyone moves in that direction easily. And it's one thing to be able to say what the strengths or weaknesses or other things within the community, but when you broach the issue of the future and particularly the timeline that's involved with the future, it's difficult to get people to really comprehend what that future what that period of the future actually entails. I should know, because I've written 3 books on the subject for Boston, but they haven't bothered to pick up my ideas yet. And the ideas would take 85 years to implement. So it is something that it's a difficult subject for most people to grasp hold of.
I understand that. And I think, maybe you break it down for them. Maybe it isn't a future, can be, maybe you ask them a time frame, or maybe, what is a reasonable future for them for their big idea. I think you can if you can sort of break it down to be more manageable for them, I think that's completely fine. So in a vision plan, you know, yes, it's long-term, but you're also going to have some short-term objectives, some midterm objectives, whenever those, you know, they might be 5 years or 10 years. So I think those ideas are also relevant, and we should also be capturing those. Some people might have some more future or long-term. They can manage that. They can process that a little bit better. But if folks are just looking 5 years down the line, I want to be able to ride my bike to this place, you know, that's sure. Well, that's your vision, and we'll take that. That's important to them. I think, yeah, however people want to express themselves, I think we should write it down.
All right, Will, here's where you jump in and say pickleball, okay? All right.
Ready.
Got it.
Pickleball.
Or Brad, maybe I should add bike trails. There you go.
And I so when we're about 10 minutes towards the end of ready to come back to the main group, Kyle's going to send a message. And at that point, I think we sort of need to, with our group, sort of figure out what we're going to report out. And that might take a little, you know, looking at your notes, kind of what you wrote down, what people are saying. And, you know, do you see any themes or commonalities or linkages among all these statements that people have been saying? Or maybe it happens as you go through question 3, you know, sort of thinking ahead, you know, someone says something and then, well, okay, that's great. Does anybody did you also think that, do you want to build on that? Or, you know, I think you can either kind of go through the process trying to build that common vision or a shared vision with your group, or after everyone has expressed their ideas, you can kind of on the fly, as we had said, you know, kind of look and see what's been said and sort of ask folks, you know, do you think this is, you know, do we all agree with this? Or, you know, sort of organize from what you've heard. So that's sort of the last step of the breakout session. So how do folks feel about kind of pulling all that information together to report out?
A quick question on that. The ideas that are generated in terms of each of the questions, for each breakout group, we're not trying to reach consensus that at all. This is just, we want to make sure we captured the facts, essentially.
People's ideas.
Yeah, people's ideas.
Yep.
People's ideas. Thank you.
And we're only going to ask, so the moderator will say, we'll go through each facilitator. You can ask for a volunteer from your group to report out for you, if you wish. It's a little hard to get someone to do it, but it's nice to have someone from the group to report out rather than yourself. So I leave that up to you. You don't have to do it. You can gauge how your group, if there's someone who would be willing to do it. But generally the facilitator will go through and will ask each of you, the moderator will ask each facilitator to report out any common themes that you guys talked about, or if there is a shared vision that you'd like to present to the larger group. So you can have so kind of giving you a couple options on what to report out. Folks feel comfortable about that, or any questions? Kathy, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying, we now have Liz's face, but I think we lost Chris Vincent. Hi, Liz.
The world of multitasking. It's crazy. Yeah, so that's sort of and then we'll all come back together and I'll go through, we'll do the report out, and then we'll follow up with the slides about how people can return their worksheets, email or mailing or drop off. We'll have the link to the survey, you know, encouraging their friends who couldn't attend, their neighbors, family members, encouraging them to take the survey. So they can do it, reminding folks they can continue to fill out the worksheet. I don't know if Kathy, you want to give people a time. I mean, I know you're going to have more workshops, so it's sort of open. at some point we would have to say, okay, pencils down.
Yeah, the survey I think is through January 15th.
So we
So,
can, yeah.
Which, I think most people, if you can get it to us in the next, couple weeks, we'd be happy.
Yeah, could start processing. Yes, sir.
Would we be expecting to do separate reports after each of the workshops? Not hold it for the to the very last one.
I think we are doing a compilation of all the workshops and all in the survey,
Okay.
because we're asking the same questions across the board for all of them.
Well, then the participants in each different workshop would be expected to be different.
Right.
Yes, yes.
It all depends on the invite list that you've got, Kathy. Am I correct?
Correct. Who registers for each individual workshop?
All right. Thank you.
I know that Tom has to get going to the Board of Selectmen meeting soon.
Yeah. Well,
So
there's still some time.
I'm just wondering if Kyle can't, we can't see him, and maybe if he could put us into 2 breakout rooms, one with Nate in it and one with Krista in it, and then we can kind of do some testing. We'll probably send some messages to you, Kyle, and hopefully you can send some messages back to us via that little broadcasting to let us know that what you have to say, which would be similar to, you have 5 minutes left or that type of thing.
And then you can shift Kathy between the 2 groups.
Oh,
All right, sounds good. I'm ready for you if you guys are ready.
All right,
did
hold
you hear
on.
that? Krista wants to shift me between groups. So
Practice moving her from room to room.
right. So maybe you can practice mixing me from. So is this like the earthquake the other day? We get ready and see what happens.
All right, hold on.
All right, Kyle, make it happen.
Everyone ready? All right.
So you're going to get that little thing. Do you want to join? And you can say, click join.
We just like flew through space, through internet space, and we ended up back here.
So in the way that I had to click to leave the meeting room, all the participants will have to do the same thing. They will
Unless
get-
Or 60 seconds later, they'll
the clock
automatic.
runs out if they forget, and they will be automatically shuttled.
Okay. Okay.
We couldn't reach Kyle or Kathy, so. I don't
Yeah,
think
that's the
we're-
problem, and I
we're
don't
not
know how to
co-hosts.
fix that.
So-
Have you, Liz, do you know anything about that? I know you've done some breakout room now. Yeah, we'll have to see what we can find to try and figure that one out.
So you and Kyle are the co-hosts?
Kyle's the host, and he's the one that can move everyone around.
Okay.
As co-host, you have some additional capabilities, like Will was talking about, where you might be able to mute people easier and that type of thing.
And Kyle will be our host next week?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Is that everybody? Everybody's back. All right. So easy peasy, right?
Yeah.
It'll be fine. Relax. There's no wrong answers. Do the best you can.
It's going to be fine.
So I came back a little late. We talked about the functionality, like the messaging and the muting. You're muted, Krista.
Who muted me?
I think we all got muted when we came back into the room.
Oh.
I did anyway.
So I've been sitting here talking and no one has heard a word that I've said. So one of the things that we're going to follow up with, Nate, is so we could not, in the chat room, we could not message Kyle as a host. So if there was sort of a technical issue or something, we could not reach him. So we're just going to figure out a process in order to do that. If maybe it's a feature that we haven't seen in Zoom or something like that, but we'll figure that out for the facilitators that next week.
I'm also gonna have to check on the YouTube recording, but it looked like it might have got screwed up when I bounced in and out of breakout rooms, so I might not be able to do that.
Okay.
I'll have to check.
Okay.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, that's okay. And we will, we also talked about setting a timer in the breakout rooms to see what that feature is, and it would do a countdown for your time in your breakout room, if that would be helpful for folks. And we also talked about changing, if someone's logged in as a phone, they call in and their phone is listed, it just says iPhone, to ask people to, well, we would have to change their name, put their name there, ask who that is, and change it so we would be able to call on them and know who they were. So I'm going to update this document. We also talked about how to open the participant list and how to send a message. So we'll add those in here as well. Anything else?
And we'll resolve the issue about the breakout rooms being able to communicate with the host via messaging, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. That's top of my list.
Kathy, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Liz. Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if we have a count of how many people so far have registered.
Not enough. We have 5 people for next Wednesday. I still have a lot of blasting out to do, and I want to get in touch with Christine Legere and see if we can't get some type of article in the paper highlighting it. So I'm going to be sending out quite a bit of stuff tomorrow and on Thursday. I will also do some of the things that were talked about, getting the workshop worksheets onto the town website. That was a great idea. And then we'll have the link to that included in the message that goes out to people, so they'll know they can click on those and print those out. So they'll have the questions ahead of time, as well as if they want to they can just look at the questions and or print them out to have them for the
Kathy,
meeting.
oh, sorry. I think this is a really easy civic engagement pitch. We just had 150 million people vote, so now you're like, what do I do? The election's over. Well, if you live in Yarmouth, we got something for you. Like if you're we all talk about civic engagement. This is literally a way for someone who cares about the town of Yarmouth, right? Doesn't matter if you live here all the time, to participate in civic stuff. That's a technical term. So I feel like that's a reasonable thing that any reporter
I
would
think she
latch
will.
on to,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. And not only is she a reasonable person, but I feel like it fits very well timed
Yep.
for what's going on in our country.
No,
Kathy,
it's a good
what
point.
is Kathy? What is the max number that we have set for this for each facilitated meeting?
We have a maximum, I think, of 80 people.
Okay,
And
so
that's if other, like staff and maybe like Krista or Nate facilitate some groups, and maybe Karen as well. So
okay.
the thing is it's webinars allow you to set a limit to the registration, but don't allow you to do breakout rooms. Meetings allow you to do breakout rooms, but they don't allow you to set the limit. So we have it automatic registration right now, but as we start getting closer, we're going to have to make it approved, manually approved. So we don't get over that amount. And then we'll have to let people know that, sorry, this workshop's filled. Can you see if you could make another workshop and or fill out the survey and let people know? I don't think we're going to get there.
All right, and if we do reach our capacity, so we will be getting. There's how many breakout sessions? How many people are we each getting?
8.
I wouldn't want you to have more than 8 people. I think that's a lot.
Okay.
6 to 8 would be preferable. 6 would be preferable.
All right, and then here we go. What if there isn't a lot of engagement and a lot of people sign up? So I just want to know what our game plan is prior to, so we can anticipate both the positive and the negative component of it. What if there's really only 5 people that show up? And so do we partner? Do we piggyback? Do we, tag team? And,
I think we get more than 5.
I know that, but I want to know
but no,
what's the plan then we all have this understanding moving forward.
Yeah, I think it would end up being just, smaller groups, and you might have multiple planning board members in each session, and you can take turns facilitating just to practice. The 18th is the first one, and it's a little odd because it's right after special town meeting. So I don't, lots of meetings, people at nighttime meetings. I think Will's point of it being, this is civic engagement. We've had a lot of it lately. Let's just keep that rolling and bring it on down to the local level and see if we can't get people. I will reach out to people that I know who I have expressed interest. We have 41 people who came to the kickoff meeting, and Joanne lovingly wrote them all thank you letters of appreciation for coming. So hopefully all of those people will sign up as well. So the first one, we have a little bit more digging to do, a little faster to get things going. I'd like to think that for the ones in December, we'll have a little bit more time to do even more promotion and publicity on them. This one's just a little tight with the time frame, but we'll keep at it.
And is it included in the selectmen's correspondence for tonight's meeting?
It isn't in tonight's meeting. It was in a previous meeting.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
You're right. But just Joanne and I talked today, and I don't know if Joanne has an update about what we can do at special town meeting. And maybe if the moderator will allow us just to make a brief public announcement at the beginning with the link to the visioning and encourage people to come, and also maybe have a bunch of those kind of the flyers that were put into the water bills. Thank you. That we could just hand out to people, say, just kind of get people knowing about it. So we'll get there.
Yeah, my intent is I didn't get to it today, but Ken Moody was on the finance committee and capital budget, so I know him, and I think we'll be able. I'm hoping we can get a quick marketing piece at the town meeting. So we should know that tomorrow. I think your question is a good one, Liz, about logistics. I mean, we don't want to have 8 planning board members overwhelming 5 members of the public. And so as we get closer to next Wednesday, Kathy and I are going to see how we're doing with registrations. I still think it's important for all of us to be participating. We may not all be facilitators. We may not need to be. but I would think all of us would want to still be part of that first launch of the workshops. But we'll have more hard data on who's coming early next week, even on the day of. There may be more registrants. And as we get that, we'll be feeding that back to you so you have a sense about, a good question about volume. We don't want more planning board members there than the public. The optics wouldn't be so good.
And I also think that you guys know people, get the word out.
Yeah.
And, you have friends. We're very, yes, you have friends, very interested in you guys participating in these
Yeah.
workshops. And we know that there's room available, and can you come and give us your ideas? So
I do think, there may be some Zoom fatigue, but maybe not. That's an unknown. So we'll keep you posted as we get more hard data on registrants. Tom,
he's muted.
you're muted, Tom.
I think he's just saying he's
He's
leaving.
waving.
I think Brad's leaving as well.
Okay.
We're
Okay,
losing-
well,
I'm sorry, I didn't say it, but this was very helpful.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I believe we're going to adjourn anyway, unless we had something else. Anyone else have? I'd like to take a motion for adjournment then.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
we need to do roll call again.
Sorry, Brad. Too slow.
He's gone.
No, I'm
No,
still
he's
here.
still here.
Oh, you're still here.
Wanted to
Brad.
see that big smile, Brad. Sorry, Madam
Brad.
Chair.
Brad Goodwin,
Presence.
Liz Hartsgrove,
Hi.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Susan Britta,